Narrowing it from the broad view of the United States down to the president's speech yesterday, and then in particular, obviously, the issue of North Korea.
Well, seen from Europe, the first thing is that the United States is a big, complex, strong democracy. So there's not one United States. We see the country, the people. It's not just the president. It's not just one administration. We also see that in the administration, between the White House and Congress, there are different views. That's the beauty of democracy. And we try to relate with the complexity of this new picture. It is clear that the policies in Washington have shifted, and this has brought us to have a new reality somehow. There are things on which we continue to work very closely together. I think of Syria, I think of DPRK, I think of many other things. There are other issues on which we see differently. And I believe, as Europeans, we have learned over the last year to be maybe more aware of our strengths. There are things like the priority we give to multilateralism, or the UN system, or conflict prevention and peacekeeping, or climate change, and I could continue, the non-proliferation system that we think are key to our own security, to our own future. And if the Americans, or if the President of the United States, rather, takes a different stand, we are mature friends enough to say, we don't agree, we stay friends, we continue to work together in other fields, but we have a different view, and we build global coalitions to try to bring forward our own agenda, knowing very well that there are some, if not many, inside the United States that share the same agenda that Europeans think is a priority. Think of climate change. It's clear to me that, including in this room most probably, there are many that believe the Paris Agreement has to be fully implemented and kept as a strong point of reference, as well as multilateralism. So maybe we've entered into a more mature state of relations. Coming to the speech yesterday, I've noticed a certain accent on sovereignty, which has been a strong debate in the European Union as well. Our union is a union of sovereign states that, after the Second World War, I've understood that sharing some elements of national sovereignty makes you stronger. And we have realized that you can serve your national interests sometimes better if you do that together with others. For us, there's no contradiction in putting our nations first and doing things together with others. That's why we believe in international cooperation. That's why we believe in win-win solutions, in cooperative approaches. That's the European way of doing things. And we really believe this works, and we see this works. And then there have been some accents that are definitely not the ones the Europeans use. We don't talk about destroying countries. We talk about finding peaceful solutions, including on DPRK. When it comes to that, we share with the United States and with others in the world the belief that the behavior in Pyongyang is completely unacceptable, extremely dangerous, not only for the region, but also for us and for the entire world. We are toughening our own European Union sanctions on DPRK, going beyond the sanctions that were adopted in the Security Council. We welcomed the decision and the unity of the Security Council, but we're doing more than that. Having said that, we see sanctions as a way to put pressure on the regime in Pyongyang to engage in a credible, meaningful political process. We believe the peaceful solution is the only one that is really available. Also because there are millions, tens of millions of Koreans in the north and in the south that would be the first victims of any military option. So we believe in negotiations. We believe in agreements that hold, especially in the non-proliferation field. What we need to do is to maximize pressure on economic and diplomatic level on DPRK, building alliances with China and Russia, and push for a political solution there.
You have considerable national security background as well. I spent a lot of time in NATO. It's an organization that I feel very strongly about. And the United States has been a very strong leader inside NATO since its inception. Can you talk about, and certainly President Trump has has increased the pressure to spend defense dollars in many countries to get to the 2% level. Obviously, the resurgence of Russia, the pressure that Russia puts on the European continent, certainly on Europe. Can you talk a little bit about the health of NATO or changes in NATO and its viability in the future?
First of all, let me say that we do share a lot of the security concerns of our American friends. We might have one difference with the current administration, which is that for us Europeans, when we talk about defense and security, for us we never talk only about military. For us, investing in the World Food Program is a way of investing in our own security. Investing in peacekeeping in Africa, it's a way of investing in our own security. Investing in the United Nations is a way to invest in our own security. Development, and climate change, I could continue. So for us, the military, the defense part of it is an important factor, but it's never the only one. Having said that, in the last couple of years, we have done more on the European defense than we have done on the last 60 years. You might know, because that's your background, the European Union started in the 50s with the idea of a European Union based on common defense, and it failed. Today we're doing that because the security environment has changed and because we know we have to rely more on our own means. And we are putting in place, as European Union, instruments to invest together. I often make one example. In the United States, you invest the double of what the European Union countries invest in defense. So we invest 50% of what you do, but the output of our investments is 15% because we invest in a fragmented manner. It's a problem you know very well. We are now addressing this. I'm ready now to launch, from now to December, a permanent structured cooperation among European Union member states to invest together in industrial programs on defense that would maximize the result of our investments. This is not a way to respond to how much member states of the European Union invest in defense. This is a national sovereign choice of countries and parliaments and governments. So the entire 2% debate, it's a national debate. It's not a European Union debate for those countries that are members of allies in NATO. But what we can do as European Union, and we're doing it, is to make sure that all European countries can invest in a more effective way, making the most out of the money we spend. Because, you can spend a lot of money on things that are not necessarily the ones that you need. Having said that, we managed to do this, increasing the European Union of Defense, together with increasing the level of cooperation with NATO. Never as now, the European Union and NATO have been close and coordinated. 2 weeks ago, Jens Stoltenberg and myself were together with all the defense ministers of the European Union member states, doing for the first time a joint exercise on cyber defense. We're going next week with Jens, the following one, with Jens in Helsinki to open together the hybrid center to counter hybrid threats. We're going to have the first coordinated exercise between the European Union and NATO. So we have advanced enormously our cooperation, and I see NATO as an healthy alliance. And as Europeans, I think we are in a better position now to contribute to this healthy alliance.
Good. We talked before we came out here. Those are that both the European defense as well as NATO. Those are all the same resources, and there's always been a struggle and a tension. Where will we apply those resources? To what entity? Is it a NATO resource or is it a European?
I've been a minister myself, not of defense, but a foreign minister. But I've spent some years in the defense committee in the Italian parliament. Member states, national governments or parliaments own one set of forces. Sure. They can use them in a NATO operation, in a European Union operation. By the way, we always perceive the European Union as a soft power. We have 17 military civilian operations around the world, mainly in Africa. We have men and women in uniform serving under EU flag, and we're proud of also being partly a hard power. But we are investing in the possibility of our member states to have stronger capacities and capabilities that then they're free to choose how to invest. It's one set of forces, NATO, UN, EU, national operations or alliances. But the important thing is that Europeans start to invest better on defense, also because this is an important element of strategic autonomy that potentially we Europeans could need to use.
So how is the EU doing? Been through Brexit. Obviously, there have been nationalist political leaders, some of who've been elected, some of who've been rejected. What can we look to in terms of the future with respect to the health of the EU?
Look, if you asked me the same question last year, I would have probably smiled anyway, but a little bit less relaxed. Last year was a difficult year. We were coming out of a very difficult refugee crisis, a shock with the result of the UK referendum, and the uncertainty on the upcoming US elections that were not there yet. Having gone through all this, and you know, Europe is resilient. We've always given our best in times of crisis. Sometimes it seems that we need a crisis to react and to move forward. That's exactly what happened. I think that the defining moment was this year in March in Rome, celebrating, not because I'm from Rome, celebrating the 60th anniversaries of the treaties of Rome that were giving birth to our union. I've seen 27 heads of state and government of the remaining EU member states committed to relaunch the European project, assuming the responsibility we have towards the world. Because you asked me about the shifts in Washington. What I've seen in this year is that the rest of the world is now looking at Europe for leadership, and we can do it. We feel the responsibility of doing that. So Europe is now more confident. The Brexit negotiations are ongoing, and we're seeing that it's more difficult for the United Kingdom than for the rest of Europe, because it's complicated to undo a set of legislation, measures, agreements, including trade. To get out of the family is probably more difficult for the one that gets out than for the rest of the family that stays united. And the rest of the family is more motivated than ever to stay united. And we see that this is needed, not only for Europeans, but also for the rest of the world. So the state of the European Union is definitely good.
Just one last question. You mentioned Syria. Can you go down on it a little bit in terms of specific focus and what you see as possibly next in the Syrian crisis, the displacement, the refugees, obviously, the tragedy that's occurred in that country, and how Europe expects to impact that?
Tomorrow, here in New York, I'm hosting a European Union event on the future of Syria and the region. And we do it every year. It's mainly humanitarian-focused event because we are by far the largest donor for Syrians, both inside Syria and outside Syria. This year, we opened to a political angle as well, together with the United Nations, with Staffan de Mistura. And I was surprised to see that tomorrow we will have 50 foreign ministers, including Lavrov, Zarif, Çavuşoğlu, many Europeans. I think Nikki Haley will be there for the United States, to discuss how to link the de-escalation processes that are starting to happen thanks to the Astana process, and also thanks to the engagement of the United States, a military process to calm down the violence, the political talks that we need to strengthen in Geneva under UN auspices, but then the rest that we can do as Europeans with our convening power, bringing together different people, to support the re-establishment of some normal life in the areas where violence calms down. And we will be looking at ways to work on the stabilization of some areas. The Syrians are desperately looking for normal reconciliation, life, and to put on the table something that can be potentially very powerful, the economic leverage of the future reconstruction. Reconstructing a country like Syria will cost an enormous amount of money that no one alone would be able to mobilize. We are ready to work in that direction together with others, starting from the World Bank, but it has to be clear that that will start only when a political agreement will be reached in Geneva. We are ready to put at the disposals of the United Nations this instrument tomorrow, launch a sort of Brussels process that can complement the military and the political one with the economic one, And this could be a very powerful engine for the somehow reconciliation of the entire region, because in Europe we have learned at the end of the day that doing business together is more convenient than making war. That took us quite some decades, actually centuries, but we got there. We believe that the Middle East could live a similar kind of experience if they start realizing that cooperating and making business together is more convenient than killing each other. I think the Middle East has a bright future.
I think we should leave it at that. Making business is better than killing each other. Thank you very much, Madam Minister.